more than 53 million. That's the number of non-professional, that is unpaid caregivers providing support for family and loved ones in the United States alone. There are more than 62 million in North America. Today, what we're going to be talking about is caregiving reimagined, not just events that happen along the caregiving journey that we try to survive and get through until our caregiving journey is done. No, it's how do we thrive? How do we recognize that it is a journey? And the journey is meant for us to have our most positive experience and for us to be a part of helping our care receiver have theirs. My name is Sue Ryan, and I've been one of those statistics for more than 35 years. As a matter of fact, I still am. In my early caregiving journeys, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was just trying to survive. I was on the emotional roller coaster, often blindfolded. I just wanted to get through. And what I've learned over these multiple caregiving journeys I've had in the last 35 years is that we are on a journey. And there are 5 overlapping phases of that journey that each one of us is on when we're in the roles of caregiving support. And the reason that I created the caregiver's journey is for us to recognize those phases, for us to be able to maximize the potential and the possibilities for us in each one of those phases. And also so that you're able to take advantage of the lessons that I've learned over the last 35 years without it taking you that long. And also without it being as challenging as it was for me in the beginning. Here's a scenario. This is a picture of my husband, Jack, and me. One morning, we're going through our routine, living the life we've dreamed of, living the life of our plans. We'd gotten up in the morning, we'd had our breakfast. He headed off to church. He goes to church every day. He has since before he was born. And I go to the gym, and I go to the gym just about every day. At any rate, we're going through our lives. We're living our plans for the day. You and I, we're all planning people. We plan so many things in our lives. When we were children, we perhaps planned the stripes on our soapbox derby car. We planned what we wanted to ask Santa for Christmas. We've planned graduations. We've planned weddings. We've planned the trip out west, or we've gotten the map and we've seen where we're going to stop. We planned if we went to Disney World, what time we were going on, what rides. We've planned where we're going to eat. We've planned. We're planning people. We've been planning all our lives. We've been planning our careers. Perhaps we've planned the trips after we retire, our bucket list, things like that. We're planning people. Here we were this particular morning. We were living our plans. We had lists of things we wanted to do. And one of the things that we had planned in the day was to go to the doctor. When we were sitting in the doctor's office, holding hands, as we almost always are, we waited for the doctor to share the news of some recent tests for Jack. No one, no thing prepares you for this. The doctor gave us a diagnosis. Jack immediately became a patient with a diagnosis, and I became a caregiver. And plans we had, immediately, those were changed. And here we are, we're sitting in the doctor's office. If you go to the doctor, you take tests, doctors make you better. They look at what's wrong and they figure out how to make things better. And the doctor said, and there's no cure. We immediately became patient and caregiver, in addition to all of the other roles in our lives: husband, wife, father, grandfather, brother, sister, daughter. And unlike the roadmaps we had for trips we'd taken, or for our time in Disney World or anything else, there's no roadmap for this. It's just this big thing. All of a sudden, it's wanting to know everything about the diagnosis and everything about caregiving. And we also realize that no one can take this journey for us. I could say, hey, I'm busy. Could you run a grocery store and find somebody to go pick up a carton of milk for us? But no, this is our journey. And we somehow have to figure out how to navigate this journey, how to navigate it together, how to make it the best possible journey. I want many things for you, but 3 things I want for you today. I want you to know that no matter what, you will never be alone in your journey. Oh my gracious, how I wish I had known that in my early caregiving journeys. In the middle of the night, I would be trying to figure out what to do. My logical mind said, do one thing, and the disease kept saying, no, I'm not going to follow what you think is right. My first caregiving experience was in my 20s. This is before the internet. The yellow pages, the white pages, they didn't have anything on it. There weren't care communities. There weren't support networks. There weren't resources. And nobody talked about it. The families didn't talk about it. The doctor had a little pamphlet. The library didn't have any information. And we certainly didn't bring our personal life into work. I want you to know that you are not alone and will never be alone in your journey, no matter what is going on in your journey. You will never be alone. And I also want you to know that when you intentionally navigate your journey with your loved one, the reason that I created the clarity of this journey, of seeing it as a journey and all of the components of it, is you are navigating it with your care receiver, your loved one, that you feel empowered, that you feel like you are capable of navigating this journey and doing it in a place not of continuously feeling overwhelmed, but of feeling confident, positive, and balanced. And third, that you have access to potential and possibilities for the best care for your loved one and the best care for you. So both you and your loved one have your best, most satisfying experiences. When I created the Caregiver's Journey, I created it because I clearly saw 5 overlapping phases in our journey. And while we're going to be focusing on the third phase, several things in the 5 steps to navigate your caregiving journey today, I'll introduce you to the other phases. The first one is the caregiver's primer, the primer I wish I had had in my very beginning days of becoming a caregiver. And it's things that if you know that becoming a caregiver is on the horizon, you see changes in your parents. You know, they've been living in the same house for 25 years. The bedroom's upstairs, the laundry room's in the basement. It's getting harder for them to do some things. And you recognize that some changes are potentially going to be on the horizon, things that you can be doing. And as part of that, now some of us, caregiving became the instant that the doctor gave us the diagnosis. There was no ramp, there was no runway. It just began. Caregiver's primer helps us in both of those situations. And then the journey begins with you. This is one of the most transformational parts of my feeling empowered and having better journeys. And that is that I learned the importance of understanding our natural way of viewing the world, how we're naturally wild, how our personalities are naturally formed. We see things differently. We react to stress differently. And recognizing what we believe to be true, what is important to us, our beliefs, our values, and our purpose, and getting those updated and aligned so that they serve us instead of sabotaging us on our journey when we need everything we have ourselves. And third, the 5 steps to confidently navigate your caregiving journey. So many different things that I didn't know in the beginning, whether it's strategies for conversations, whether it's what to do when our loved one is having a moment when I call it a dementia moment. They're physically there, but they're somewhere else. Navigating our lives as caregivers when our loved one is in a continuing care community. The variety of things that we have on day in and day out kinds of conversations that we don't even know to think about. And how to stay fully present in our experience so that we see and we have the opportunity to be with our loved one and meet them exactly where they're at. And the grace of grief. Overlapping our caregiving journey is grieving some of the things that, for example, we may not have access to anymore. Those plans we used to have, intimacy with our loved one, choices that we're making that we want to make in order for us to be able to provide the best caregiving experience and for our care receiver. And yet there's still things that we grieve. And when our loved one's journey is done, we're continuing to grieve. And one of the things that I have learned over and over again, and I've observed in others, is that grief so often isn't a pure emotion. It's clouded, it's weighed down by other emotions, including guilt and anger, frustration, and all kinds of things that don't allow us to process our guilt so that we're present and we're able to one day move forward. And when we move forward, we can reawaken ourselves. We can recreate ourselves from where we are now. But we have the opportunity to move forward in our lives so that we continue to thrive as we know our loved ones would want and we know is the right thing for us in our lives. I mentioned there are more than 53 million currently non-professional caregivers in the United States. Several other statistics that are really alarming are that the increase in the rate of the number of non-professional caregivers is escalating at a faster and faster pace every year. And now that the baby boomer generation is also entering into the range of where they're going to be needing caregiving support, those numbers are anticipated to rise almost exponentially year after year. The disease, the diagnosis, whatever your diagnosis is, it respects no one. No one is exempt. They don't say, oh, here's someone who's led a wonderful life of service. They've helped countless people around the world, and they're so obviously in love. We're going to give them a break. We're going to let them just have a wonderful rest of their lives together. No one is exempt. The diagnosis, it respects no one. It doesn't care that you're young and your career is launching and you've got a beautiful wife and a young family and you've got your future ahead of you and so many plans and so many things that you're really excited about doing. No. The diagnosis doesn't tell you, I'm just going to give you a pass. And what we don't know is, we're not living our lifestyles so that we become a caregiver and a care receiver. Jack and I never had that conversation. My dad and I never had that conversation. I didn't have that conversation with my grandmother. Hey, you know what? Let's try to live lifestyles so that one of us becomes a caregiver and one of us becomes a care receiver. And there's no way to absolutely guarantee, no matter how we live our lifestyles, that we won't have a particular diagnosis or that we will. And so there's no reason why we should ever ask the question, why me, or get stuck in things that don't serve us. The disease, the diagnosis, it doesn't respect anyone. Today, I'm going to focus on 3 particular areas in the roles of being caregivers in the navigating our caregiving journey. I selected these 3 because they've been so profound in all areas of my life, including my roles in caregiving support. And some of them have come from other areas of my life and being combined with my role in caregiving. So the first one is having goals, roles, and responsibilities of caregiving support. And yes, that did come from my professional career, is that we had to get very, very clear on what our goals were. Our company set goals for us to perform to. I had personal goals for what I wanted to make sure I achieved. I was in enterprise application software sales. And so I had my own goals and I also had the company goals to achieve. So I wanted to create goals for the caregiving journey because in my first few journeys with loved ones, I had no goals. I was just trying to survive, to make it through, to get done. That's not a goal. And yet, when role after role was brought to me to be a caregiver, I recognized that I wanted to make sure that I set goals so I was making the journey the best for me and I was seeing where I could grow and what I could be doing. And then also for my care receiver, because I wanted to make sure that I and everyone else who was part of the care team over the course of my care receivers, the rest of their life, knew what the goal was. So my care receiver, very simple, safe and happy. Every single decision I make for my care receiver, and in this case, it's my husband, Jack, every single decision I make is, does it help him be safe? And does it help him be happy? Happy can be just content, not having anxiety. What do I do to help him have joy? The second goal, and this is something that Jack and I created together, the diagnosis, it does not define us. It is part of our lives, and it's something for us to navigate and include in our lives, include with our friendships, include in our conversations. It does not define us. And the journey, it doesn't become our entire life. It becomes more and more of our life. And for my husband now, it's most of his life, but it's not all of our life. It's not our entire life, that we don't let go of everything, that we are able to be intentionally evaluating all of the different areas of our lives and making wise choices. So, for example, I currently choose not to travel. And so when I did that, I looked at what I wanted to do with my family and what I wanted to be able to do with my husband. And I intentionally chose that instead of just saying, oh, well, I can't travel anymore. I intentionally chose it. So I feel very good about it. I had conversations with the family about it. So, how do we incorporate the choices that we're making to be intentional and include them in the rest of our lives so that our lives, the areas of our lives, stay aligned? We don't stay balanced, but we stay aligned. And then also that I continue to learn how to thrive in my caregiving journey. How can it teach me more about myself? How can I continue to grow as a person? How can I do more things that can help both my care receiver and those who are supporting him and others around us? So, goals, I set very clear goals and I focus on them. And then roles and responsibilities of caregiving support. This also came from my business career. We worked on very, very large enterprise accounts. And because of that, we had a lot of members of our team. We had partner companies. We had a lot of members of our clients' team. And we all had to understand exactly what was needed from every person. And we knew what we needed to do, who needed to be responsible for it, and how we helped each other so that each of us made sure that we were successful in what we were doing, so that our clients were successful, our company was successful, our team was successful, and individually we were successful. And so I'll show you in a moment. I broke down the roles of caregiving support so that I could identify what am I most qualified for and how do I, in each different level of caregiving support, how do I understand how to be the best support or the best caregiver? Can these change over the time of our caregiving journey? I used to be, for each one of my care receivers, I was the primary caregiver for a period of time. And yet that wasn't the right role for me in different experiences. For example, there came a period of time when I was no longer strong enough to lift Jack if he fell, or if he went into what I call a dementia moment, where he was physically there, but mentally he was somewhere else. If he did something that he would be shocked if he knew what he was doing, I wouldn't be strong enough. And so staying fully present to exactly what's going on allowed me to recognize, to choose that I needed to shift my role of caregiving support. And that way I had no guilt. I didn't feel bad about it. I didn't, I it was like, I'm doing the very best thing for my care receiver, for those around us, and also for me. And yet, no matter what the role is, we're always involved. So here are several of the roles. The first one is primary caregiver, responsible for all the responsibilities of caregiving support. And then when I moved, for example, when I moved Jack into memory care, I was still the primary caregiver for some of his needs. And yet I was a care partner to the certified nursing assistants and to the nurses and the activities director and to the dining staff. I was a care partner. And so my responsibility was, how do I help him be the best resident? And how do I help them have their best experience when working with him? An example of this was one morning I got a call and they said, Jack doesn't want to shave. And I said, oh, I've got a solution for that. From the time before he was born, he went to mass every day. His family has always gone to mass. And as long as I've known him, he would go to mass every day. He would get up and he would shave and he would go to mass and then he would go to work. So all you need to do is to say, Jack, it's time to get up and shave so we can go to mass and go to work. And he did. It didn't work. So that created less resistance from him with the caregiving team. It required less work on their part. So as a partner, it's helping them be able to do their job as well. And also it's helping him not have anxiety. So he's also being the best care receiver. And so in all of these different roles, that's the vision that I have for how we work with it. And self, I put self in there as well because it's so easy for us. Shave off a little bit of something. They need something more. We shave a little off of ourselves. I shave a little off of ourselves. And it's so easy for us to shave off more than we have access to. I'll give you another quick story about that. In my professional career, I just kept taking on more and more responsibility. I was excited. I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. And I just assumed in my role of caregiving support, I could do the same thing. One day, I was feeding Jack a sandwich with some potato chips. And he dropped some potato chips on the floor. And I got upset about that. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. He didn't try to do that. Why am I so upset? And I realized I had lost something I call the grace of space. In our logical minds, you would be careful not to drop potato chips. But with his diagnosis, his logical mind wasn't always serving him. And when we've taken on more things than we can handle on our own, we lose that grace of space, the opportunity to have that pause between what happens and how we're going to act, not unconsciously react to it, based on being fully present to what they have access to and where they are. Self-care is so important. So, because nobody else can take care of us, and we have to be able to observe in ourselves when we're not practicing enough self-care. You're always involved. No matter what role you have, you're always involved. Identify what you're most qualified to do. And when we understand, this is part of the reason it's so important for us to understand our personalities in a meaningful way, because we understand what we're naturally gifted at, how we naturally deal with stress. We understand the things that are our gifts. Caregiver, when I was going through my career evaluation things, that wasn't on the top of my list. It wasn't even on the top 10 of my list. I hadn't had conversations about it. I didn't have a reference reservoir for it. What am I qualified to do? Not much. And so over time, as I looked at it, of course, I developed skills and expertise in areas. And yet there were things I knew I was never going to be qualified to do. And I had no issue with saying, I'm not qualified to do that. Let me get support. And then, as I mentioned, ways that we can provide the best support for those on our team. And we know when to change roles when we feel that nudge, when we feel like something's, I'm not in control here. For me, when I recognized that I could not keep Jack safe if he fell, and I could not stay safe if he went into a dementia moment that I couldn't handle. And the third thing is if he had a medical condition and a medical situation that he needed medical care for right away, I could certainly call in professionals, but I wasn't the best qualified to handle some of the things, even to observe them. So it's understanding this massive acceptance, radical presence. I came up with this after a particularly challenging experience with my daddy right there, my dad, my hero. I underserved him in a time where it surprised me and it disappointed me. And it was a great lesson for me to learn. The whole time I was growing up, my daddy used to say, I want to keep you safe. I want to keep you from getting into anything I can't get you out of. And I want to teach you to think. I want you to know how to think. So when I'm not there, you'll know what to do. Hmm. We didn't know that would include while he was still alive. I won't go into the details of the experience based on our time, but suffice it to say that he wanted to go walk the dog and he was going to go out a door into an area where I thought it wasn't going to be safe. And so, what did my dad always want me to do? Be safe. So I'm thinking, Daddy, 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 we should go this way. Now, I've accepted the fact that my dad had dementia, and I was present to the fact that he wanted to walk the dog. But I kept trying to get him to do something that he used to be able to do. And then I also kept worrying and focusing on all the possible things that could go wrong. And I wasn't fully present in his experience. And I hadn't fully accepted that that's all he had access to. Now, ultimately, things worked out. And as I evaluated the experience afterward, what I realized is that I had accepted, but I had not massively accepted that he had dementia. I hadn't 100% accepted it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to understand it. I just have to accept it. And I accept it without judgment. This is what is going on. And because of that, when I can fully and massively accept it, then I can stay radically present to exactly what's going on in the moment, exactly what my dad had access to, and exactly what I should be doing. And through massive acceptance and radical presence, whether there's a teeny tiny moment of joy to be experienced, I get the most out of it. And I do everything I can to help my care receiver have the most joy in even the tiniest moment they have access to. And yet, in those challenging moments, it's like the world slows down and I'm able to make wise choices. So, massive acceptance and radical presence. One of the other things that I learned when I learned this lesson, and then I began living my life, all the areas of my life through this, I realized I was totally equipped for this journey. When we learn this, we recognize that yes, there are going to be challenges, and I'm not saying it's a joyful experience, but boy, there can be great moments in it. And one of the things is when we recognize that we really are equipped for this journey, we can have it. We can make it through and do more than just survive, but we can thrive. And I also recognize that when we become caregivers, part of it is our own evolution. What are we learning about ourselves that can help us both through our journey and beyond? Massive acceptance and radical presence. And the third point, choose your perspective, choose your experience. And oh my gracious, this is so helpful in our journey as caregivers. And yet I have found it so powerful in all the other areas of my role. So here's what it is. It's our journey. This is our journey. And what that means is that we don't want to take on what somebody else says the journey is. I've observed so many other people, and I've caught myself in my early experiences listening to what somebody else said about it and taking that on as my truth, as what my experience is. And when we do that, we cloud the experience with things that aren't ours. We don't see it clearly through the lens of what's really going on. And here's an example. When Jack was early in memory care, one of the nurses came to me and said, we have a psychiatrist who's going to come see him next week. And I said, well, I didn't authorize a psychiatrist. Why would a psychiatrist be seeing Jack? And they said, well, she comes and she sees the patients. And I said, okay, well, I'll be there. Well, when should I be there? And she said, oh, no. She comes to see them by herself. I said, but my husband has Alzheimer's disease. He can't tell you what he ate for breakfast. How is he going to answer any questions? I'd like to meet with her first. So we set up the meeting and she comes into the room and she sits down. She has more letters after her name than there are letters in the alphabet. And I wrote these words down. Those are the words she used, and I will show you what her expression was when she started our conversation. This horrible, dreadful, debilitating disease. And that was how she started our conversation. Now, this is a woman of authority, lots of certifications. She's been doing this for 25 years. I could have taken that on as my truth, as the lens through which I saw the disease. And I said, no, that's how she chooses to see it. I will listen to what she has to say. I will honor her perspective and I will listen to it and I will make my own choices. Just like today, you're listening to my insights and the things that I've learned, but I don't want you just to take and accept what I'm saying as perfect for you. I want you to explore. I'll share resources with you. I want you to gather information and choose your own perspective that serves you, that gives you the clearest vision, because otherwise you can't possibly live your best journey because it's not your journey. And then something else that's so easy for us to do, no matter what the diagnosis, there are stages or phases or steps or whatever you want to call them, but there's a progression of some sort. And one of the things that's very easy to do, when that overwhelming diagnosis comes, we study and we research and we look at all the things that we can. What can we learn? What could we do? And yet, what we shouldn't, what we don't want to do is to look at our care receiver through the lens of the phase or stage or step they're in. When we stay radically present to exactly where they are, we see what they need in the moment. We serve them having their best experience in the moment. Give you an example. In the lunchroom where we were with our family members and our loved ones, there would be periodically conversations with the family members who would say, oh, well, my loved one did this today. I think that's a stage 4. And another one said, well, my loved one did this. I think that's a stage 3. And I actually one day caught myself saying, well, Jack did this morning. I think that might be a stage 4. And I stopped instantly. I was trying to, rather than look at the experience of what Jack was going through, so I served him in the moment, I was trying to look at where he was and put him into a stage of the journey. I encourage you to accept where they are and look at them where they are in their exact journey. Now you can study the journey and of course it's good to have information, but don't try to put them into a stage. Walk with them through their journey. Why did I create 5 steps to confidently navigate your caregiving journey? I've learned a lot over the last 35 years, often through things that were very challenging and it didn't work out so well. I want your journey to be easier than mine. I want you to learn faster than I did. I am so passionate about that. I have realized that when you talk about purpose, this is part of my purpose, is to communicate what I've learned, to be part of your user's manual, to be your guide. I want you to use emotions in your life that serve whatever experience you have. I want your personality and your beliefs and your values and your purpose to serve you, to allow this to be a journey that's one of growth for you, and that you continue to thrive in your life even while you are going through and navigating all the responsibilities and roles of being a caregiver. I don't want you to waste any time on frustration about why me, what did we do wrong, questions that we don't have answers for, so that you have more time to experience the journey and what it is. And I also don't want you to get stuck. I want you to navigate through your journey with your loved one and through your journey once they've moved on. I want you to have access to answers and possibilities, everything that can help you. I'll give you an example of someone who I worked with. I've changed her name, we'll call her Sarah. Sarah and David had so many plans. They had trips planned all over the world. And there were things that they had thought about traveling and doing before they retired. And they said, no, let's wait until we retire, because then if we go someplace and we want to stay longer, we won't have to come back. So they had lists and plans of things they wanted to do. And when David was diagnosed, Sarah was angry. She was angry at the disease. She was mad at the fact that their plans were gone. No more plans, no more travel. She was frustrated. She was exhausted. She was handling all the responsibilities of caregiving. She didn't want to tell anybody. She didn't want anybody to know. And even though she was surrounded with people who wanted to give her help, they all respected her and knew. They could see that David had something going on, but they didn't share it, and people wanted to show her respect. And so they were ready and willing and able whenever she was interested, if she would be, in sharing it with them. But so far she hadn't been. And the longer she was doing the caregiving responsibilities, the more exhausted she got. And then she got mad because she realized, I don't like being a caregiver. I get resentful about having to do these things. I get frustrated because David's not doing what I'm telling him to do. When we started working together, and she began learning about massive acceptance and radical presence, and she began to be open to receiving help. And she looked at breaking down the roles and responsibilities. And she didn't judge herself, and she didn't judge the disease. She was able to find peace in her life. And one of the greatest gifts was that is just before David passed, she was able to see how peaceful he was in his life. And so as he passed, she was also at peace. Rosalind Carter says there are only 4 kinds of people in the world. There's a very good chance that we are going to be caregivers at some point in time in our lives. And I want you to be able to confidently navigate your caregiving journey so it's the best journey for you and your care receiver. I appreciate your investment of time. I hope that you have recognized that you'll never be alone in your journey, that you are going to be empowered, capable, able to navigate this journey, and you will have access to resources and support so that you can thrive in your journey and have the best experience for you and your care receiver. If there's anything I can do to support you, from having a conversation to speaking to participating in the online course or reading my book, doing workshops or keynotes, any ways that I can be supporting you, please don't hesitate to reach out, and here's the link. Thank you again for your investment of time today.